I think we're all good to go. Welcome to the live Rabbit Rundown Day 1 recap, Day 2 preview. We're going to get started here very shortly. I'm going to be going over obviously the games that happened on Saturday, the SDSU Men and Women both winning. And we're going to go ahead and look at the upcoming matchups. Right now, we just know the girls matchup. Won't know the guys till later. But we're going to start by reminding everyone we're brought to you by Dakota Iron. So when you're in need of some heavy equipment, that kind of stuff, stop in at their location here in Sioux Falls or visit them online, and they can help you out with any of their heavy equipment needs. Cody, day 1 in the books, initial reaction. How are you feeling after day 1?
Feeling pretty good. We got 2 wins. So can't ask for much more from Jackrabbit basketball. So yeah, good first day. It was fun environment, and ready for the semifinals.
Yeah, it was a fun first game. I think everybody was, the girls' game had a weird feeling after, a near 30-point win, but kind of felt at times that it wasn't that dominating. And then the guys obviously can never win a first game easy. It seems like every time it's got to be a battle, so no surprise there. But yeah, it's 2 wins, hard to ask for much more. But yeah, I think we'll kind of dive into initially right away.
Before Jacob, I'll interrupt you. So we're gonna have Andrew Holton from the Brookings Register join us on our discussion of both the men's and women's games. So we're gonna add him in right now. Andrew, how's it going?
Pretty good, as good as I can be with this snowstorm. I mean, I thought maybe Paul Mills was right, with terrible weather. I mean, it's pretty nasty out there.
Paul's sitting in that hotel room today, telling everybody he told him so.
Yeah, he's probably sitting there saying, I told all you people, but I don't know.
Yes, for sure. There was some good chirping I heard last night from some of the SDSU fans. They were holding coats up to Paul behind the bench and things like that. So
I did hear he got a little bit of booze, maybe not as loud as some people expected, but I heard he did get booed.
He got a nice little boo to start the pregame when they introduced his name, but it probably helps a little bit when all the SDSU fans are drinking free beer over at the event down the hall. So probably come Tuesday, if they're still going head to head, that little bit of a chorus of boos will be a lot louder for Paul when he gets introduced.
Definitely.
Well, shall we dive into the first game of the tournament, women's game yesterday? Just kind of start with initial thoughts on everything. I kind of thought it was a little bit of a weird vibe to start, kind of a sleepy crowd, and the women's team came out a little flat. St. Thomas actually was leading at the end of the first quarter. I think it was only the 3rd time in conference play that the Jackrabbit women had been down at the end of the first quarter. So a little bit of a sleepy game, but, by the end of it, it was almost a 30-point victory.
Yeah, I think I told you, Cody, after the game, it kind of was like a lot of their games away from Frost Arena where the team kind of maybe hangs around with them in that first quarter, and then they outscored them 26-11 in the second quarter. And then I felt like they were pulling away, and then St. Thomas kind of hung around, and then they went on like a 7-minute scoring drought to end or didn't make a field goal in the third quarter, and that kind of put the game away.
Yeah, AJ kind of made note of it too, the new format, how maybe that led to a little bit of an advantage for St. Thomas to start the game, how they had to work out the pregame jitters or the first game jitters still, whereas St. Thomas got those out of the way. I think I don't know, I guess Cody or Andrew, I don't know if either of you guys noticed that, maybe more in the guys' game, that seemed like maybe more of a effect that they had, but it seemed like the girls' game, they just came out a little flat. It didn't seem like they were nervous or that kind of thing, but I guess the new format, do you think that had any cause for the slow start?
I mean, I think yes and no. I mean, both teams, St. Thomas and Omaha, they both shot the ball pretty well to start. And so I think maybe that kind of plays into it. You're used to playing in that arena already. But I think I don't know if we want to talk about the guys' game right now, but Hendo, made a good point that when you got all those fans and you have some players that maybe haven't played in that moment before, which the women do, and Paige Meyer and Drew and Brooklyn Meyer. I think it does kind of give you maybe a little nerves because you haven't played in front of a crowd like that this season. And I think we maybe kind of saw that in both games.
No, I think there's probably a little bit of nerves and maybe the good nerves. It means you care and you're amped up. But it was interesting. I think Zim had a tweet about it. How over the years it does seem like the women tend to not really be nervous in this tournament, whereas the men, even kind of in the crowd, you can sense there's a little bit of a nervous energy. I didn't get that as much last night in the men's game, but why do you guys think that? The women seem to have a little bit more handle on playing in this environment. Is it just the bottom of the Summit League isn't as good on the women's side? Is it they're coming in better prepared? Is it maybe the time of day that the game's getting played? What plays into that?
I think it's, like you said, the bottom of the Summit League is, when you're beating teams by 40, 50 points or whatever, I think you maybe don't have that. And they've also, I think, the women have, fought through slow starts kind of before. So maybe that plays into it. But like you said, in years past, they handle it way better. And I think it is because they're just that much better than, the bottom of the Summit League. It is an insane gap of talent.
Yeah, and I think the time of day, probably, you kind of brought that up there at the end there, Cody. You don't have to sit around all day, especially the guys last night. Not starting until 8:30. Woke up probably this morning at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock for a shoot around or something. And now you just sit around all day and you think about, hey, we got to play this, season ending basketball game at the end of the night. So I think that probably does play a little bit into the nerves like today. In the past, they have played that earlier game. So I don't know about that. And the girls also are a lot more senior led. Last night we did see Alex was the guy that seemed to be the steady hand for the guys, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But the girls, you have Maya, Tori, Peyton. They really got off to a hot start. Saw Drew come off the bench. She settled in, helps everyone settle in, and then Paige and Haley got going later in the game. So, maybe the nerves were there, but the girls seem like they have that structure of, hey, we got, these seniors, even Tori Nelson's that junior leadership, and then our sophomore and, freshmen, once they get ready to go, we'll be ahead and comfortable by the time they get ready to go and locked in for the end of the game.
Well, and another thing with the men, I think because they've had so many close calls that maybe when they do start a little slow, that doubt maybe kind of starts to creep in a little bit of like, and like you said, Cody, you can kind of feel a little bit of a nervous energy in the crowd. We're like, here we go again, slow start. We're not making shots. And I think that kind of plays into it too, even if, you haven't had guys that have experienced it. I think it kind of rubs off. But and whereas the women, they just kind of dominate every quarterfinal game. It seems like they haven't had a close call ever. So I don't think that doubt ever starts to creep in.
Yeah.
No, I think all of that. And I was just going to say, focusing back on the women here, we know who their next opponent's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be playing Oral Roberts, who knocked USD out of the tournament just a little bit ago. Ended up being a fairly dominating win for Oral Roberts women. It's also one of the only teams that have had a halftime lead against the Jackrabbits this year. So, what's going to happen tomorrow if the Jackrabbit women come out slow again and Oral Roberts with the pace they play, they can get going right away. So I think that's kind of an interesting point with this upcoming matchup is how that start of the game will go.
Yeah, and AJ, I think someone asked AJ, how do you avoid a slow start again? I think he brought up a good point. They just maybe need to be more deliberate, in their offense, whereas it seemed like they were kind of going through the motions maybe a little bit in that first 5 to 10 minutes. And like you just said, I don't think you can do that against Oral Roberts because they can put up points in a hurry. And if you get off to a slow start, you could be looking at, maybe a 10-point deficit. But I I mean, SDSU last weekend in Tulsa looked, really good against this ORU team. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, how that plays out.
Yeah, and ORU came into this game against USD with a 6-game losing streak. I think after being that one of those top teams, I think they unveiled a press today that they hadn't been using before, and that is a little bit to go with they're playing USD, who isn't that very deep of a team, so that might have been played into it. But I would imagine if they try to throw a press at SDSU tomorrow, SDSU does have a little bit better. They have a better backcourt to break that with between Maya, Paige, Haley, and then Drew coming off the bench. There's probably not many teams that could have the benefit of having a 5-year or 4 or 5-year player from the Pac-12 coming off as a backup point guard to help break that press. So we'll see if they try to throw that at SDSU tomorrow, and how SDSU responds to it. But Oral Roberts today just had way more energy than USD did from tip to the final whistle. So it'll be a tough game if they, if SDSU doesn't come out with that energy. But I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I'm not too nervous at this point for that game yet.
No, not really too nervous. I think the big thing too is whoever controls the tempo in this one is probably going to have the ability to control the game. SDSU obviously likes to get out in transition, but not near at the pace that Oral Roberts does. They like to play at a little bit more of a chaotic pace and just put up shots and score. And I think if SDSU can make Oral Roberts play in the half court, defense, they're not built to do that. They're I think the worst defensive team in the Summit League. So if SDSU can make it more of a half court game, I think they control this game pretty well throughout most of the game.
Yeah, and I think you kind of saw that, the very first game, right? It was the first Summit League game of conference play. I was at it, and it was kind of more of a hectic pace, and, it was kind of all over. And then I think last week they did kind of slow it down a little bit more, and that caused some issues for Oral Roberts, both on offense and defense, because I don't think their half-court offense is near as good as when they can get running.
Yeah, and just a more senior-like team, I think too, that just they're not going to be, if they do get down early, I think they're not going to be afraid to kind of claw back. But I think the pace of play too, like USD missed a lot of shots, had a lot of turnovers, and that's when Oral Roberts is to get that rebound, get out and run. Where SDSU, like you guys are saying, play slower, but make shots on offense. Don't turn the ball over. When you do, not loose ball turnovers where they're going to get and run. If it's like an offensive foul, that's a lot different because Oral Roberts is going to struggle more in that half court game versus just that running gun of, miss shot, outlet, run down the court, make a layup type thing. So we'll see, what ends up happening there. But I think we also probably saw a little bit of, a coaching win for Oral Roberts. USD, it was their coach's first year ever as a head coach at any level. So, now you get into the biggest tournament where coaching probably plays into it a little bit more. Oral Roberts was able to throw some wrinkles at them, throw some different pressures at them. And I think they're just too slow to adjust because they did have a big third quarter, when they had time at halftime to recuperate and kind of get a new plan. But then the fourth quarter, Oral Roberts made a couple of slight tweaks again and just took that big lead on USD. So obviously, in this matchup, SDSU will have that coaching advantage. But we'll see, maybe tomorrow their coach comes out with a whole new game plan and it takes AJ a little bit of time to adjust to it. But at this point, like I said, I'm not too, nervous about what they're going to throw at us.
No, I think SDSU's won every game in conference play up to this point, so I don't think you can be too nervous heading into it. But
it's kind of funny. We're sitting here talking about a slow start, and they still scored 87 points, and they look fantastic on offense, I think, for most of the game. So I don't think anyone needs to be worried at all.
Yeah, and with NDSU losing on the women's side as well, we'll see what happens with UND. It could be a fairly easy path in the championship game if they can get by Oral Roberts. But anything else on the women's side, or should we flip over to the men's?
I don't think there's much more. I think we've kind of covered it all on the women's side. It's going to be a lot of control the pace and play, they play their defense, the top defensive team in the conference. So just play their defense, play their pace of play, and it's going to be, should be a lot more like the results in Tulsa than in Brookings.
Definitely. And, on the men's side, obviously the SDSU men got a narrow-ish victory last night. It was a pretty tight game for most, probably the first 35 minutes of it. SDSU pulled away with some late free throws and some kind of late game execution. Ended up with the 8-point victory. But yeah, thoughts on that game, just kind of opening it up.
I mean, sitting there in the second half, it was just, I don't think I've watched a game like that where just neither team can literally make a basket. I think at one point the two teams had combined to miss like 30 of their last 32 shots. And I think they combined to make like 11 shots in the second half and only 3 threes. But I mean, I think Hendo made a good point. After the game, he said that the team is kind of down in the locker room. But, once you get to March, it doesn't matter how you win. It matters that you win. And, they got it done. I mean, defensively, I thought they looked very good. And they kind of fed into, I think in the first half, Omaha was very hot, obviously, from 3. And I think they just kind of decided, this team, there's a reason why they're the 10 seed, and I don't think they're that good of a 3-point shooting team. So let's just kind of make them continue to play on the perimeter. And they did that, and it worked great because, Omaha couldn't make a shot in the second half.
Yeah, it really seemed like the injury pregame to Sutton for Omaha through SDSU for a loop for the first half too. Not knowing he was out and then how they would attack, their style of play. I guess, going smaller, SDSU just took a little bit longer to adjust to that. And I think also didn't want to just play 4 guards for a whole half because they're not very deep there. So I think for the first half just was more of a kind of wait and survive and then make their adjustments in the second half because, didn't see a whole lot of Kyle. Saw a little bit of Moores in the second half, but it was really the Dentlinger show until he got, in foul trouble. And they went with Moores, so a little bit smaller of that lineup. But yeah, it just seemed like they were slow to adjust whether or not it was something they were just trying to survive so they could really get a game plan put together, or if it was just they were waiting to see if Omaha would ever adjust out of that smaller lineup. But that was kind of odd that I felt that it took that long for him to figure that out because it seems like once they decided to put Charlie and Mims on the 2 best, guards, it really shut them down, especially from that 3-point line. And it seems like Charlie always shows up at the Premier Center and always has some big games here. And, doesn't always do it scoring, but defensively is just, a pest for anybody.
Yeah, he played a really good game. Mims had a good second half, I thought. With that smaller lineup that Omaha came out with, I thought it was a little weird. Dentlinger didn't get more touches in the first half. It seemed like he kind of, he had some foul trouble, but it seemed like he was a little bit of a no-show in that first half. Just when he did get the ball in the post, it was kind of just back out. He wasn't going right at the basket like he's done against Omaha in the past. I think he had 26 in the last matchup with them. So, but Omaha, to their credit, they also played with a lot more intensity and were, flying around on defense in that first half than they've shown most of the year. So, and then second half, yeah, like you said, it was a rock fight. No one could score. It was a little ugly at times, but SDSU, I think, adjusted better to how they were calling the game. They got downhill, got to the free throw line. Omaha probably has a few gripes. It was maybe a little bit in SDSU's favor, but I don't think it decided the game by any means.
No, I think SDSU definitely, they settled for some threes there. But like you said, Alex Arians, he did a great job of going to the basket. Zeke was going to the basket, quite a bit. And yeah, I think they made the adjustments. One thing in the first half, with that Sutton injury, I think, Marshall had only made like 19 threes the whole season. So you're probably he's like a 27% 3-point shooter. So I think they were thinking we can play off this guy, and then he got hot. But then in the second half they made the adjustments, and yeah, I thought SDSU, like you said, adjusted to the way both the refs were calling the game and just kind of how the game was playing out in the second half. And I think that's what kind of led to the win.
Thoughts on the overall environment there in the first half with, teams going back and forth threes. We had the technical foul. We had some scoreboard issues. It was kind of just a very odd game flow where it was intense at times and then went away, and then it was intense and some back and forth. It was fun, I thought, as a more of a basketball fan than an SDSU fan. It was fun because sometimes that late game can be not as, exciting.
Yeah, it was the atmosphere is great. I guess I was gonna ask, did you guys have any qualms with the technical that Fiddler got? I didn't think there was any, anybody would have qualms with it, but I got on Twitter, today, and I'm starting to see maybe more of the people writing the green and Fargo having some issues with it. But it seems like they really got away with taunting a few threes right at Hendo and the bench before they finally got the tee. And Fiddler's was real bad. At least the other couple, it looks like he hit the three and turned around immediately. Fiddler took like 3 steps down court, then looked back at the bench and made the gesture right directly at him. So I didn't think it was a big a deal. Fiddler freaked out like he didn't do a thing. But now I'm seeing some Fargo people, maybe a little bit upset that there was a tee. They thought it was a little bit quick on the tee trigger there, where I thought it was pretty rightfully deserved.
I thought it was deserved. I mean, it's one thing to maybe do it to a player or whatever, but I just think to do it to the opposing coach, and it was right in his face. Like it was and the craziest part about it is like, I think he probably would have got away with it if the ref wasn't behind him, but he was like to the left from where we were sitting across from the SDSU bench. The ref was like to the left of Hendo. So he's staring right at it. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, I thought it was warranted, especially because Marshall had done it, a couple minutes before that. And he was doing it right in front of us. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I agree with the let them have fun, but I don't think you can just do it right in front of your opponent's face. I don't know.
I thought the technical was deserved, but I wasn't anything past you have to call the technical there, but I think for Omaha it was a fine thing. They were playing with that chippiness and the edge, and if you don't have that, you're not going to be SDSU in that environment. So
yeah, it didn't really change.
I don't think
the momentum at all. I mean, SDSU made 2 free throws, but I don't think it's not like SDSU went on like a 12-0 run after that. So
yeah.
I think the fouls got to them in the second half because they all seemed to started getting in foul trouble. But it seemed like when they were playing with that edge, playing faster, I don't think the technical stopped the swagger they were trying to play with. But the second half, when they started getting in foul trouble, it seemed like they were starting to second guess themselves on defense a little bit more. And that kind of is where SDSU got a little bit more of a foothold in the game. But yeah, it was a weird first half where Omaha. You said like Marshall, he was doing it on both sides of the court. So I would have been, maybe a little bit surprised if he got teed up because he was he would turn to the non-crowd side, the media side, and make the same gesture he made right in front of Hendo. So
yeah,
at least he was consistent. Fiddler was not doing that to the other side. He waited till he was right in front of Hendo and company to do that. So, but I mean, Marshall, before that, Marshall and Zeke had a ref kind of step right in front of them, but too. They were jawing. It was an emotional environment. It was fun. It's March basketball. That's what you want. But it was a high emotion game because I think Zeke had a carry, and the entire way down the court, the ref was breaking Marshall and Zeke up because they both were talking. They didn't care the ref was there. So a tee was going to happen somewhere, and that's where it came in. Just it was one of those high emotion March basketball games.
Yeah, totally agree. And as Jackrabbits generally do, they survive and advance in this tournament. Not a game I think anyone's going to go back and watch the tape and, remember all the glory of that game. But they survive and advance. They're awaiting the winner of NDSU USD. I think, obviously, NDSU poses the bigger threat. If it happens to be USD, are you guys, nervous at all? Or do you think – SDSU can handle USD pretty well because they did down in Vermilion, but then up in Brookings, it was a little bit of a closer game.
I think they would. If you look at basically every time they've played them at the Denny, other than the Michael Orris shot, which was when they were heavy underdogs. I mean, they've blown out USD basically every single. I mean, well, the championship game, I guess but that was kind of. I mean, even then, SDSU kind of handled them. It just kind of feels like when USD gets to that moment, they kind of fall flat and maybe don't come out with the same emotion. And I think having the crowd behind you, especially in a rivalry game, I think that kind of pushes them. But USD did. I mean, they probably should have won that game in Frost. I don't think they scored the final like 3 or 4 minutes. But that kind of goes back to I don't think they handle the moment that well. And I think NDSU has a team that has been there. A lot of those guys from last season are still there, and I think they can kind of handle that crowd better. So I don't think SDSU would really have that much of a problem with USD in the tournament here.
Yeah, I think USD is probably they're probably gonna. I don't envision us seeing them in the second round. I think kind of going back to the same thing with the women's side, you got a first-time head coach going against in this case a very veteran coach in Dave Richmond, who seems to always have another gear for the Bison come this time of the year. So don't really envision seeing the Coyotes. I think I'd prefer to see them over the Bison. I think Matt's pretty comfortable against Tassos. I think some of those guards they're good for USD. Their guards can get hot, but I think SDSU has more answers now. And I think last time they played was I don't remember if Charlie was back, but Alex was coming back from his injury or his time away, so he was still getting back to the groove of things. So I think now with a healthy Charlie, healthy Alex, you're not too worried about their guards anymore because now you do have that depth to really defend them. We've even seen Morris and Kyle have good games against USD. And obviously, you're going to be nervous when you face the Bison if they are the ones that advance. Grant Nelson, he's the reason there's a lot of NBA scouts out at the Summer League tournament right now, and they're going to be full force tonight. And if they win, they'll be there tomorrow too, because Grant's kind of what everybody's there to watch. It's hard to defend a guy like Grant who's 6'11" and can handle the ball and shoot from anywhere on the court.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys. I think USD, especially with Alex and Charlie back, doesn't pose as big of a threat. The SDSU fan in me wants to probably face USD. I think the basketball fan in me wants to get that NDSU-SDSU environment for the semifinals, just because that's probably going to be an extremely close physical game that comes down to the wire, as it seems to always do. I will say the one thing that Brad Newitt pointed out when we did our Summit League preview that's a little different about this NDSU team is they don't have that point guard where they've in the past against SDSU they've kind of had the advantage in that matchup, whether it's Griesel, Paul Miller, Lawrence Alexander. They have very young guards this year. Their star players Grant, who's more of a forward wing. So how does that play out in March in this tournament? Can they be as effective in this tournament without that kind of star guard to help keep things under control? But both games in the regular season were close, so it will probably be close again if they meet up.
I will say the one thing about USD up in Frost, I mean, they did a really good job on Zeke. I think I don't remember what exactly they held him to, but it kind of ended up hurting them because they went small so they could switch everything, and then I think SDSU just killed them inside, which I think, Cody, you've brought it up before. Matt Detlinger kind of owns Tassos. So I don't – yeah, I mean – and then like you were saying, Jacob, I mean, Grant Nelson's the best player on the court, and usually come March, if you have, the best player, you have a pretty good chance to win. But when SDSU played NDSU at Frost, I thought SDSU did a really good job of kind of attacking their bigs, kind of like they did against Oral Roberts, getting them in pick and rolls. And, we'll see. One thing from last night's game I thought SDSU didn't do a good job of was when they double Zeke, I felt like they were just kind of slow and not getting the ball moving out of that double, whether it was doubling Zeke or doubling, Detlinger or Will. I felt like they kind of struggle with that a little bit. And I would assume, whoever they play will kind of look at that and, try to attack that tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think Will definitely, both Will and Matt probably, if they're going to win a semifinal game, will have to step up and play better than they did last night. And handling that double team. And I think if they were to face NDSU, it would be more like the matchup in Fargo that was in the 60s, than the offensive kind of explosion both teams had in Frost, where it was, 90 to 85. Just nature of this tournament, how NDSU is going to even slow it down more than they typically do. I would expect a game in the 60s. So I don't know which team that necessarily favors, but yeah, that's just kind of a thought I had.
No, yeah.
I think, saying in the 60s, I think last night was kind of a good example of this year's SDSU team finding different ways to win. I think maybe last year they did rely more on their offense. And if they would have an off shooting night, that's when it kind of, obviously they went undefeated, but that's when they kind of struggled. And I think their defense this year, especially the last month or so, getting Charlie and Alex back, I think it's been really good. And I hate to use the word connected because Hendo uses it all the time, and I've heard it enough. But I think he does make a good point this season that they do seem to be playing really well on that side of the floor.
And it seems like even when Kyle's really on as that rim protector, they're at that next level too, because that's when Charlie and Matt really get in the face of their opponent, because they know they have a guy like Will back there that will block any weak layup to the at the rim. And we even seen Dent had a couple big blocks last night where
Moore's had a couple.
Yeah, Moore's
one at least.
Yeah, they we're starting to see the bigs really go up there and make a difference at the rim, maybe more than we have in the past. But yeah, I think you said earlier too, Cody. I think to win, they're going to need William, Kyle, and Dentlinger to really have some big games here. I've been on that the Dentlinger train all year, kind of ringing the bell for him being that All Summit League player. And last night, don't know if he just wasn't aggressive enough or what it was, but against NDSU or against USD, you kind of want to see probably 12 to 15 shots from him because when he's efficient, that 10 to 12, whatever, he's going to make 8 to 10 of those shots. And that's going to be big for him. So they need a big game out of him. And they probably need a combined 15, 20 out of Moores and Kyle in their roles to really push them forward. And, Moores, when he gets in the game, seems like he does really well, but just seems very short bursts that leave him on the court. So they must see something there that, they say like, hey, after he's been playing for like 2-3 minutes, we got to get him out or else, something falls off. But he had, he's back in an arena. He won a state championship. So we'll see if Moore's, if he can have another big game or two here down the stretch of this tournament.
I did think it was, you bring up Detlinger last night. I did think it was kind of weird because I think he scored on one of the first possessions on a post up. And I was thinking, man, that looked kind of easy for him. And then I don't know what happened after that because it seemed like every time he touched the ball on the post, it was just kind of slow. He wasn't going right away, and that double would come, and that kind of caused some issues for them.
Yeah, and to what you were saying, Jake, as well, I thought Moore's played pretty well in the little bursts he had last night. Had a big block, hit a three. As people have said all year, he's continuing to get more comfortable, and it'll have to be all hands on deck, team effort to win this year. They, unless they get a 30-point game out of Zeke, they got to have contributions from everyone. But I don't know. Any other closing thoughts anyone has on Summit League tournament in general, women's, men's side, or just excited for the semifinals?
Two things. First one's a question. That Omaha game, was it anywhere near any of the Cardiac Jack games? With the feeling of how the style was going, or was that more? It just felt comfortable. You just didn't think they were going to blow them out. What was kind of the vibe you guys had with the Omaha game? Because I've seen a lot of people say, they were nervous, they weren't nervous. There's maybe a stretch for a couple of minutes where it's like, man, this could go either way. But were you guys nervous at all with how that game was going? And would you put it up there with any of those cardiac jack games as, if you were nervous, like, being up there kind of nerve wracking?
I didn't think it was quite at that point yet. I felt pretty good most of the game that they were still in control, even though it was only, a 1 to 5 point margin that they were leading by. And then, coming down the stretch, they were able to extend that to closer to 10. So I didn't really get that sense. And I didn't feel it in the crowd like you did, in previous cardiac jacks moments.
I think, Cody, you asked me around like the 11-minute mark when people should get nervous. And I think I said under 4 minutes. I don't really get as nervous anymore after, being a student and then now just working for the paper. But yeah, I didn't think there was really ever a nervous energy in the crowd. And I think it had to do with, Omaha just couldn't make any shots. So I think I think I told Zimmer, I said, if they get an 8-point lead, this game's over because they can't score enough to come back. And it kind of proved to be true. I think once they went up 7, they were, pretty comfortable after that.
No, yeah, I agree with that. It seemed like once they got up 7 or 8 points, it's kind of over from there. Didn't know if Omaha, it felt more like a 20-point lead at that point. Omaha just didn't have it offensively. And then this is just, observations, entire tournament. Oral Roberts right now, if they play like they did last night, you guys, is there a shot SDSU has against them if we see Oral Roberts tomorrow night play the exact same way they did against UND, which, I think UND a far superior team. I think they got lucky down in Tulsa, really stormed back. So not buying a whole lot of stock in that first round matchup, but if they come out, have a dominating win like that, going into Tuesday, if SDSU is, still there, do you think do you have any confidence that SDSU can pull it off, or what's your kind of thoughts, I guess, on the first game for Oral Roberts?
They looked really good. They had 2 turnovers, none in the first half. And then even when North Dakota, I think they cut it to like 16 right away in the second half, and then Oral Roberts went on like a 12-0 run and just ended any thought of them having a chance to come back. They looked really good, and I thought they looked really good up in Frost until that second half. They just have all the weapons. They have the 2 kind of stars on the team, and Asmus and Vanover, but then all their role players just knock down big shots if those 2 are maybe struggling, or you can't double anyone because they're just going to hit open shots. And kind of reminds me a lot of, those SDSU teams, maybe with Dom and David Jenkins, where it was like, okay, those 2 are kind of, run the show, but everyone else around them can knock down shots. And that's what makes teams really hard to beat, especially come March, because, other players can step up when maybe your stars are having a bit of an off night.
And I think the other thing too is they look comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the crowd wasn't against them as much per se as it would be in a potential SDSU matchup. But they just, from the tip, they knew they were going to win that game. And I don't even know if they were playing their absolute, hardest at times. They were just kind of calm, cool, collected. We're going to get it done. And that's how they've played a lot of the Summit League season.
It did seem like in the second half there, it was almost like they were just kind of like going through the motions, toying with UND on offense. They were just kind of isolation basketball, and they were getting anything they wanted. And then I think the other thing that should give Oral Roberts a lot of confidence, I know it's probably twice the number of people down in Sioux Falls, but they just went into Frost Arena in front of a sold-out crowd and kind of handled that adversity really well, I thought, and came away with the win. So I think they have to feel pretty confident, especially after, last night's win.
No, that's a good point because, McBride, I think even Mwamba, a couple of them hit really big, shots in that game in Frost where they cut it to 1 or 2 and then they'd hit a 3, just silence the crowd. So I'm hoping they play St. Thomas. We'll see if they play Western or St. Thomas. I think St. Thomas has a potential to knock them off more so than Western just because they do shoot it pretty well from 3 if they're just, making everything. And then they also have zero pressure because they can't even advance. So it's kind of just let's do what we can to have a fun tournament. And sometimes that's a good style to have in March.
Yeah, and if you're Oral Roberts and you get St. Thomas, at least there's a little bit of like, in your head thinking, hey, if we lose this game and this team goes and wins the championship, we're still in the the NCAA tournament. So they're probably hoping to face St. Thomas too to keep their chances at the NCAA tournament a little bit higher that way. But we'll see. It's Oral Roberts, like you said, looked really comfortable. It will be different. I think the large atmosphere that an SDSU crowd would bring to that matchup, a lot different than Frost. But we'll see. It's it'll be a fun game. Hopefully it happens. I guess hopefully not. Hopefully we get like St. Thomas or Western much more comfortable in that game. But it's probably a game a lot of fans would like to see happen if you're a neutral observer. But yeah, I think Oral Roberts, like I said, they look really tough. So we're just curious on what your guys' thoughts are with them, because between Danover, A. Smith, McBride, they have the weapons. It's just can they show up? Because they have never won some major Summit League game in front of the crowd in Sioux Falls. Their only win was at the Pentagon when it was his family, and then last year got knocked off by NDSU when there was a little bit more of that crowd in there. I think there was more NDSU fans last year than there have been this year. But I guess we'll see what Tuesday would roll around if it is SDSU Oral Roberts.
Completely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's kind of all I have. Andrew, thanks for joining on with us. It was a good discussion. Always good to have your insight, following the team all year. So thanks for
popping on. Problem. Should be, a fun couple days here. I always enjoy, I think last night I was thinking, you just want the men to at least win that first game, because then, it makes for more fun for the rest of the tournament. Because when they lose that Saturday night game, it's kind of like, well, now what, So, it's a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the next 2 days.
All right.
I agree.
Well, is that all we have, Jacob?
I think that's all we have for this one. We'll post this, I think normal podcast, but we'll do something after. I don't know if we'll do a live show or anything again, but we'll post something after the upcoming games here on Monday, and we will, if hopefully they're playing Tuesday, we'll do the same thing. But until then, we will, hopefully see everybody out there Monday and get a couple more wins.